Hello, my name is Russ Timpson. I'm the founder of the Tall Building Fire Safety Network. What you're about to see is a video from our 2025 Tall Building Fire Safety Conference. You can find more other great videos on tall building fire safety on our YouTube channel, and there are many more presentations on our website, www.tallbuildingfiresafety. If you find our videos and presentations useful, please like and subscribe us on our YouTube channel. Halfway through the video, you're going to see details of our 2026 conference, which will take place in May in London. We have a fantastic program, and we also have a separate high-rise firefighting masterclass with Brent Brooks and special guests from around the world. There are also details of our 5-day intensive tall building fire safety management course, which will be running in London throughout 2026, but also in the Mediterranean, in Cyprus and in Malta. This is an ideal course for anybody who's dealing with fire safety matters in tall and complex buildings. So I hope you find these videos useful. And as we say in the Tall Building Fire Safety Network, go high and go well. Thanks.
I'm following those two very digital presentations. This is very analog.
Well, I mean, you've mentioned the golden thread, but I think just
As Ross said, my name's Pete Davies. I'm the Business Development Manager at Fireco Limited. We're best known as the inventors of the door guard fire door retainer. We do other things as well. I've worked at Fireco for 15 years. I'm also a member of the Fire Industry Association's Door Control Task Group. So I've got a lot of experience helping customers to tame unruly fire doors. And one of the biggest problems that we see facing the social housing sector at the moment is the problem of non-functioning door closers. So this is a shorter version of a 1-hour CPD that I've written on the subject. So I'm just going to try and give you a flavour of that over the next 25-30 minutes. So I think we can all agree that fire doors are some of the most important pieces of fire protection that we use in our buildings. They're vital for slowing down the spread of fire and the toxic smoke that it creates, and they help protect those escape routes for anyone that needs to evacuate from a building. The various components that form a fire door set and their upkeep are crucial for ensuring that fire doors are able to perform as prescribed. However, I think we can probably also all agree that as an industry, we've got a very long way to go when it comes to making fire doors, which can often feel heavy and cumbersome to use, feel less like a barrier or a hurdle that needs to be overcome, especially within the context of social housing. So as I say, non-functioning door closers, specifically on flat entrance doors, is a big problem within the social housing sector. And many of our customers have told us that between 30 and 45% of their housing stock suffer from these kinds of issues. And with door closers often being fitted on the internal face of the door or over the resident's threshold, it can often be a difficult problem to recognise and remedy. So here's the good news. It's rarely a deliberate or malicious attempt to undermine sound fire safety strategy. Where residents take this kind of action, it's by and large not done out of malice, they're just trying to make their own lives easier. It is instead a symptom of a wider problem, and that is how heavy fire doors can appear. And it could be easy to assume that it's just the elderly or people with mobility impairments that struggle with these kinds of problems, but fire doors don't discriminate. Fire doors are equal opportunity bullies. The bad news is that we can't place the blame for this problem solely on the shoulders of residents. As Peter Apps identified in his book Show Me the Bodies, which explored the many failings that led to the Grenfell disaster, operational decisions and poor maintenance led to 77 out of 120 door closers in the block being non-functional. Despite many complaints from residents, despite the issues being identified in risk assessments, despite even enforcement notice from London Fire Brigade, nothing was done to deal with the problem. And whilst non-functioning door closers weren't the only problem at Grenfell, they certainly played a very big part in the internal fire spread. And that is the problem, isn't it? A fire door that cannot self-close is no longer really a fire door, is it? It's just a big bit of wood flapping about in our compartmentation lines. So as we saw in the Grenfell tragedy or in the fire at Twin Parks in the Bronx, New York City, where 17 people died in a stairwell after a fire spread from an apartment with a door that lacked a self-closing mechanism, doors not closing when they need to can be a major factor in fire spread. It's a critical issue in preventing fires from moving through a building. It's likely that where we see or are made aware of deliberately disengaged door closers, a free swing device could be a better solution than a standard door closer. So I'm going to assume that most of the audience have an awareness of free swing devices. However, as BS 7273 Part 4, which we'll come on to later, makes little distinction between free swing and hold open devices, it's important to understand the difference, especially when considering how you want different doors in different types of building to perform. Very often all we want is to keep fire doors in a fixed position where they're not likely to be propped or wedged open, and this is often achieved with a door retainer or hold open device which releases a door on a relevant signal from fire detection. And this can be done to improve accessibility, to increase natural ventilation. In the care environment, for example, we know that open bedroom doors can decrease feelings of loneliness and isolation. However, in those circumstances where we're looking at bedroom doors in care homes or flat entrance doors in social housing, a hold open device is often unsuitable. In those instances, all we want is for a door to have a full range of movement on its hinges without any of the weight or resistance that we associate with automatic door closers. So while some free swing devices do also have a hold open function, the most desirable feature is that doors fitted with these products can be opened and closed with little to no effort at all. And when the device receives the relevant fire signals, the free swing function is disengaged and the built-in closing mechanism shuts the door. And of course, the method of actuation for free swing devices, the way in which the release mechanism is triggered, will vary depending on the nature of the building, the type of alarm system used, results of risk assessments, and of course, budgetary considerations. Many people still see fully cabled or hardwired systems as the only way to get complete compliance with the relevant guidance. But with developments in technology, specifically radio frequency systems, this might not be the only way to achieve the desired level of compliance. By modern standards, many view the hardwiring process as a time-consuming, expensive and messy process. And it can have huge negative impact on occupants of a premises where sites are live or occupied by large amounts of people. Acoustically operated door release mechanisms, or AODRMs, rely on an audible signal, usually around 65 decibels, to release the mechanism. With improvements in sound filtering technology, these devices have become more reliable and offer a quick, cost-effective, easy solution. However, when we look at the guidance available, specifically in BS 7273 Part 4, these types of acoustic device might not offer the correct level of compliance in certain situations. And then we have radio frequency systems. These bridge the gap beautifully between fully cabled and cable-free systems, operated via a hardwired radio transmitter, which can be integrated with relevant fire detection to form part of a critical system. Radio frequency devices offer all the benefits of a cable-free installation, whilst offering high levels of compliance to acoustic devices. Like fully cabled systems, radio frequency devices would be reliant on relevant levels of automatic fire detection being available. So, free swing devices, they seem to be a reasonable way to deal with the symptoms that can cause residents to take matters into their own hands. But with the guidance saying that fire doors need to meet a specific level of compliance, it's tough, sometimes nearly impossible, especially in certain types of social housing, to achieve that level of compliance. And trying to reconcile guidance from British standards with the needs of the people we're trying to protect can feel like navigating a very tangled web of compliance. So does the fire industry know how to handle this paradox? Well, before we go any further, I want to give you a very quick overview, and it will be a very quick overview, of BS 7273 Part 4. It's known for being a very tough standard to comply with, even in the best of circumstances. We'll also look at the type of automatic fire detection that's used commonly in social housing and how that can affect the type of solutions that you can use. However, there's a couple of key points that I need to cover first. So BS 7273 Part 4 is the guidance document for automatic hold-open devices, both hardwired and wire-free, and it deals mainly with the mechanism of control between the fire door and the hold-open device itself. Like all British standards, 7273 Part 4 is a guidance note and not prescriptive law. Now, that is not to suggest that we can ignore the guidance that is given to us. But we do need to recognise that these documents are designed to be flexible. Fire safety should not be a tick box exercise where you try and shoehorn everything in to a specific standard. Sometimes we have to think outside of the box to solve specific problems on site. And this will be especially important when we look at solutions for disengaged door closers. So taking our lead from the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, we promote a risk-assessed basis to choosing suitable hardware for keeping doors held open safely. This allows a responsible person to really understand the nuances and idiosyncrasies of each different building to make a tailored solution for each situation. However, where this function is not performed, which is often, clause 4.1.4 of the standard recommends that the system is selected from the category of actuation in Annex B, Table B1. And whilst that offers a great framework and a compliant system on paper, it might not prove useful in some situations. The final thing to consider before we move on is that a personal preference for a certain method of doing things does not mean that anything outside of that remit is non-compliant. It sounds really obvious when you say it out loud, but we often speak to customers who've been told that a way of doing something is non-compliant, when in reality it is compliant, but the person making that judgment has a tried and tested way of doing things that they prefer. This core tradition, which effectively says we've always done it this way, can prevent meaningful change from happening and can allow other larger risks to go unmitigated. So, BS 7273 Part 4, one of the key things it does is classify systems into 3 different categories. It's important to note that the hold open device and its mechanism of relief forms only part of the category of actuation, with the automatic fire detection forming the rest. This means that even fully hardwired or cabled systems might not achieve a critical level of compliance if the fire alarm panel is not capable of certain disablement features. So clause 4 of the standard gives us 3 categories of actuation: critical, standard and indirect, formerly category A, category B and category C respectively. And the systems are categorised based on the level of risk and the chance of failure within its system or the critical signal path. Critical systems offer the highest level of compliance under this standard, and they're often required for things like doors leading onto or forming part of an emergency escape route, doors through compartmentation lines, and importantly for the context of this presentation, flat entrance doors. One of the key requirements of a critical system is that devices should be able to release the door on a fault signal from the fire alarm. This keeps those crucial escape routes, stairways, lobbies, etc. safe in the event of a fire should the automatic fire detection be unable to detect a fire due to a fault. And this can be a major obstacle when trying to look at free swing devices in some types of social housing. So we have various types of social housing, and the level of automatic fire detection will depend on the nature of the building, with Part 1 systems in care homes and halls of residence, a mix of Part 1 and Part 6 systems in sheltered schemes, and then very often just Part 6 detection in general needs or purpose-built blocks of flats. So I just wanted to make it really, really clear what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about the level of automatic fire detection. So this is a care home, this is a hotel, this is your student accommodation. You've got a Part 1 fire alarm system throughout. So chances are you've already got the right level of automatic fire detection to have a hardwired or radio free swing device fitted to a flat entrance door. You've got the level of compliance that the standard wants you to have. You don't need to worry about it. In sheltered schemes, we often see either a mix of Part 1 detection throughout communal areas with Part 6 detection used in accommodations, and sometimes we see Part 1 throughout. Whilst not as straightforward as a care home environment with some slight adaptations to automatic fire detection, it's likely that a critical level of compliance can still be achieved. Additional Part 1 detectors can be installed in flats themselves solely as a means to actuate the free swing device, or also as a means to notify occupants of the premises to a fire, depending on the fire strategy used on site. While some schemes will have on-site staff during the day, residents will be left to evacuate themselves should a fire begin at night. So to ensure that the door is going to release behind them when they actually go out is vital. But in general needs or purpose-built blocks, with some very rare exceptions, we tend to only see some Part 6 detectors in the flats themselves, with no communal or Part 1 fire alarm system to speak of. Now, this can be a major stumbling block when trying to deploy things like free swing devices in these environments. And this is the type of environment where the problem of non-functioning door closers tends to be most problematic and is the most difficult to solve. Because without that communal or Part 1 detection available, you're never going to achieve the critical level of compliance that the British standard wants you to achieve. In an ideal world, we could link a Part 6 smoke detector directly to a free swing device, but as a manufacturer, we've been unable to find a single Part 6 detector on the market that will give the relevant disablement features that a critical system requires. Sometimes we see other forms of detection, so things like sprinklers and automatic operating vents. Where these types of system are employed, this could present an opportunity to use a radio or hardwired system. Invariably, some form of control and indicating equipment will still be used, which will likely have the relevant outputs, which you can use to instigate the release of door release mechanisms. Either way, unless you're prepared to think outside the box in these types of situations, trying to find a solution will be impossible, and that's possibly why the industry is struggling to deal with the problem. So, we know that free swing devices can be more appropriate for dealing with the common issues that residents face, which lead them to tamper with door furniture. We know that under relevant guidance, devices fitted to flat entrance doors should form part of a critical system and require specific levels of automatic fire detection, which isn't widely available in general needs blocks of flats. So what do you do in situations where there is no automatic fire detection? Well, you can really only go so far as is reasonably practicable. So far as is really practicable is an important legal principle in the UK health and safety legislation, including fire safety. It places a duty on employers, building owners or responsible persons to take measures to protect people from fire risks, but balances this requirement against what is considered reasonable in terms of cost, time and effort. In fire safety compliance, under Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, those responsible for a building must implement necessary fire safety measures. The term "so far as is reasonably practicable" is applied when determining the extent of the fire safety measures themselves. The interpretation affects fire safety compliance in several ways. It means that the responsible persons must take steps to reduce fire risks as much as possible, but not to an extreme or disproportionate degree. If the cost of reducing a risk is grossly disproportionate to the benefit gained in terms of reducing the risk of injury or death, it may not be deemed reasonably practicable. Under the Regulatory Reform Order, the key responsibility is conducting fire risk assessments which help identify the hazards and potential impact on occupants. The principle of "so far as is reasonably practicable" influences how the findings of this assessment are acted upon. It means that the steps taken must reflect a balance between the likelihood of a fire occurring and the measures necessary to mitigate it. In cases where compliance is questioned, demonstrating that safety measures were taken so far as is reasonably practicable provides a defence. The responsible person would need to show that they considered both the risks and the available safety measures, and that any decisions not to implement further precautions was based on a reasoned and proportional judgment. So far as is reasonably practicable offers flexibility, but also demands robust documentation and justification in case of scrutiny by fire inspectors or in legal contexts. And of course, fire risks may evolve, and so must the safety measures that we use to deal with them. So far as is reasonably practicable is an ongoing responsibility, not a one-time action. And the building use or occupancy could change, or if new technologies become available, fire safety precautions may need to be reassessed in light of what is reasonably practicable at the time. In essence, so far as is reasonably practical requires a proportionate approach to fire safety. It allows for flexibility in how fire safety standards are met, but also requires a careful and rational process in determining what is appropriate, given the circumstances for each building or environment. So with that in mind, let's talk about variations. It seems to me that there are still many within the industry that are scared of using variations, or perhaps don't understand them, or don't feel comfortable with the idea. And this could have roots in previous wording that we've used in our guidance documents. So up until fairly recently, we actually used the term deviation in BS 7273 Part 4. This change in terminology has been part of a broader revolution in standardisation language. The word deviation could imply a departure from or failure to comply with the standard, which might suggest a potential disregard for its recommendations. The change in wording reflects a more precise and controlled approach to how exceptions to the standard are handled. Variation implies a deliberate and considered adjustment that still adheres to the overarching intent of the standard, but accommodates specific circumstances. It's less about breaking rules and more about structured, permissible modification, and allows for greater flexibility within the framework of the standard itself. This indicates that while the core principles of safety and function remain intact, there's room to adapt the approach based on individual building or system needs. And this also makes sense from a legal perspective. In some regulatory contexts, deviation might suggest non-compliance, which could have legal or insurance implications. Changing the term to variation avoids this potential issue and aligns with standards that allow documented, justified and approved changes to recommendations. So BS 7273 Part 4 Clause 6 lays out the requirements for variations in its own standard. Whilst this is not a get-out-of-jail-free card for non-compliances, variations can be applied if a suitable risk assessment has been completed. And this goes back to what I was saying about fire safety not being a tick-box exercise. You actually have to assess the risk, right? Variations should be detailed in the specification or noted on the commissioning certificate during installation. And variations have to be agreed upon by all interested parties. That includes the resident, leaseholders, premises managers, local fire and rescue services, primary care authorities. Everyone that has got an involvement in that fire safety in that building needs to be involved in that decision to use variation. So what's important here is that last bullet point really, is agreement from all interested parties. Your local authority for fire will need to be involved in the process. They'll probably be aware of the risk already. So they understand the risks that you're trying to mitigate and the rationale behind it. And it's also vital that when dealing with flat entrance doors, that the resident is also aware of what's happening. Without this consensus, the variation won't be compliant. So I just wanted to give you a few examples of where variations may be deemed appropriate. So Mr. Jones, he's lived in his flat on the 9th floor for over 40 years. His kids have grown up there. His wife passed away there. He now lives there on his own. And he's unwilling to consider moving because of the strong sentimental attachment he has to his home. Mr. Jones struggles on a daily basis to get into his flat, but because there is no automatic fire detection, as far as the responsible person is concerned, then there isn't a solution that they can deploy in the building that would be compliant. So eventually Mr. Jones, whose son is a carpenter, has his son disconnect the arm on the door closer itself. Hey presto, Mr. Jones's daily struggles are over. He can get in and out of his flat. Unfortunately, he has made that door non-compliant. And then we've got Sam. So Sam is a single parent with a 4-year-old daughter and has been provided accommodation next door to Mr. Jones. She comes home from school run or from shopping with bags and trolleys and children and buggies, and she always struggles to get into her flat. She speaks to the council about the issues and raises concerns that her daughter is likely to be injured by the door when it closes on them. But again, because there's no automatic fire detection, the responsible person is unable to find a solution. So taking pity on her, Mr. Jones's son does the same action he did for his dad, disengages the arm on the door closer, and hey presto, Sam and her kids can get in and out of the flat, no worries. But it's not just general needs where we see this. We do sometimes see this problem in sheltered housing. So you might have residents in sheltered schemes that have conditions that would preclude them from easily operating a fire door. And because there's no staff on site overnight, the resident will find it very difficult to get in and out of their flat. And again, out comes the family member, the ratchet set, off comes the arm on the door, hey presto, in and out, no problem. Again though, the door is non-compliant. This would be slightly easier to deal with to get a critical system. As I say, you could adapt the control and indicating equipment if it's deemed reasonably practicable. More often than not, it won't be because budgets are going to be very tight with these types of property. So again, a variation to the recommendations of the standard could deal with all three of these scenarios. So in The first two scenarios, as I say, the main obstacle is that lack of automatic fire detection. With no Part 1 system installed, it's just going to be impossible to get that critical level of compliance that the guidance tells you need. And it's, as I say, it's likely that installing an L5 automatic fire detection, which is what you'd need, would be not reasonably practicable. In the second scenario, the key issue is that the automatic fire detection to form a critical system is, again, not reasonably practical. So a variation to the recommendations of this standard could reasonably be applied here. And perhaps instead of looking at a hardwired product, you could look at an acoustic device, tested, commissioned, and working with the Part 6 detection in the flat itself. But again, unless the responsible person actually does the footwork and looks at what the standard is saying about variations, if they assume the only way to deal with this is to have a critical system, then they're just not going to deal with the problem, and they're just going to constantly bang their head against the fire door as they tell the resident that they can't disengage the door closer, and they'll do that over and over and over again. Remember, the resident just wants to get into his flat. He's not that bothered about whether his door is non-compliant. So variations can offer a tangible, effective way of empowering residents to be able to get in and out of their flats on a regular basis. There's some other things to consider, of course, with these types of solutions. Maintenance. There's very little maintenance for an acoustic device as there is for a hardwired product. There's only one more thing you have to do for it. Can anyone guess what that is on an acoustic product? Deadly quiet. So with acoustic devices, you're going to have to change batteries every so often. Other than that, the testing regime for them is exactly the same as it is for hardwired products. You've got to test them once a week. You've got to report any logs in your fire alarm logbook, inspect them at 6 monthly intervals to make sure they're not falling off the door, change batteries every 12 months. In a nutshell, that's it. So there's not much more you need to do for wire-free as you do for hardwired. Testing, obviously, that's very important as well. So you want to be looking at EN 1155 or EN 1154. You also want to be looking at your BSEN 1634 burns testing. Make sure you've got relevant global test evidence or test evidence for specific tests with door manufacturers, so that putting that device on your nice shiny new door set isn't going to compromise the door's performance, and it's not going to allow fire to get through the door any quicker. People often ask us with swing-free devices, am I going to be trapped in my flat? The answer is no. When it reverts to being a normal door closer, it will be exactly the same as it is now. So they will require a bit of effort to get out, but in that situation where you've got a fire going in your house, you've probably got a little bit more adrenaline going in your body, and you're probably going to be a little bit more capable to pull that door open. So you're not going to be trapped in your flat. You might want to look at a delayed release. So delayed release allows the resident to get out of the flat before the release mechanism closes the door again, and that can be set up on a kind of ad hoc basis with each individual situation. And again, a continuous review. It could be that 2 or 3 years down the line, having a improved automatic fire detection or upgrading the automatic fire detection in the building becomes more attainable. So you could look at replacing the whole system. But that continuous review is really important, just to make sure that year on year, month on month, the system that you've got installed is still the best option for that particular resident. One other thing about automatic door operators, so there are some impairments, such as wheelchair users, that won't be able to pull a door open with a free swing product on. So automatic push button devices are a better solution in those situations. Make sure they fail safe on the fire alarm activation, because a lot of them don't, and make sure they fail safe on a power loss as well. But other than that, sometimes automatic door operators will be more useful than a free swing product. So hopefully this has given you some ideas to take away. Hopefully it's demonstrated some of the potential solutions that you can apply to these issues of non-functioning door closers if you're prepared to do the work and put a variation in place where it needs to be. And look, let's be honest, in most buildings you wouldn't need to look at variation because you're going to have relevant automatic fire detection present. But where you don't, a variation is a very good way of dealing with those issues very, very easily. That is the end. Thank you very much, Russ.